We're deep inside a labour colony on the outskirts of Ahmedabad, which is India's 5th largest city, where these labour colonies are building these new developments for India's growing middle class. Many of the people who are living here come from rural villages, so in a way this feels like a village. Even though it seems incredibly, and it is incredibly sad and overwhelming, there is a lot of beauty here as well in the intimacy of the narrow streets. There's courtyards where people will cook together or do washing. And I think what's interesting in the contrast of the developments and the labour colonies of the people who are building these developments is that a lot of the stuff here is what we talk about in architecture school in terms of urban planning and street life. Like throughout my thesis project, I questioned the idea of beauty and finding beauty in the kind of innovations that occur in such scarce conditions. Visually, I think there's beauty in this because each decision, each way that one of these materials is placed shows a decision for me. I look at it in such an analytical way now that I see why people have done certain things.
But walking here and filming here is, I wouldn't say embarrassing for us, but it's...
For a lot of my studies in the beginning, when I was here, I found it really uncomfortable. To come and be documenting and taking photos, I felt incredibly encroaching on people's private space, and I felt really uncomfortable about that. But because we came the other day and we familiarized ourselves, me and my partner, with a lot of the people here, it was our way of kind of asking if we can come back and film. Yeah. Okay, here's security.
But it's good to be conscious.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah. Namaste.
Namaste, namaste.
I thought they were going to kick us out, but they're just saying hi. Namaste. Oh, they also live here. Yeah. Cool. Photo okay? Nay? Okay. Take care. Namaste. This is the one that has the chimney, the slit. Yeah. The light looks really beautiful actually. But typically the stoves inside will always be placed next to a wall where the smoke can be vented at the top. Then it's not just for cooking, it's a way to kind of smoke bomb and get rid of all the mosquitoes inside. Jugaad is a Hindi word for making do, or like a hack or improvising. So I was looking at Jugaad moments not only within the labour colonies but throughout all of Ahmedabad. So, and I talk about Jugaad urbanism, and I guess Jugaad urbanism can be described as like a strategy to survive in a city where often there's scarce resources. There's no defined site as well, generally. There's no materials, there's no money, and generally contractors and developers don't see it as their responsibility to provide any housing. So the project essentially is trying to work with not much at all, but see if something can come from that and kind of build upon the architectural intelligence that exists already within the labour colonies and take clues from that and just provide small incremental improvements on what already exists. In some kind of strange, abstract way, I feel a connection with the kind of nomadic lifestyle that exists. Like since I was a child, I was brought up by a single mother, and we were shifting a lot. I went to like 5 different schools, and then when I was 17, I left New Zealand and went overseas for the next 4 years until I went back to New Zealand to study architecture. So, and then I've been coming to India back and forth ever since. So, in a way, I feel like a personal connection with understanding that transient lifestyle, but the biggest difference is that perhaps for me I have a choice.
Yeah.
This is a kind of courtyard space and open to air, but it is shaded. but trying to encourage people to be cooking outside, so providing kind of private shaded areas where they can make the same outside ovens and hopefully not be inhaling so much of that smoke fume. I think what's interesting about this drawing is that it shows that there's this kind of structural, quite prominent structural grid, which I identified as one of the key things that were missing on the labour colony, like some kind of structural grid that can be flexible and modular that people can attach to using realistic, like available materials that they can find. So I analysed the labour colonies in a few different ways. One was to come up with a set of rules and guidelines that any design or structural framework should kind of tick off. Things like planning for drainage, so there's not pools of water that mosquitoes weren't attracted to prevent diseases like malaria and dengue. But then the other layer was social patterns as well, to provide spaces for daily activities and socializing.
आपके देश में भी जाएगा मैं जानता हूँ
Namaste. This is like a shared social space in the middle, so this becomes like a kind of chalk, like a communal courtyard, but it's also quite a public one because it's part of the circulation through to the houses at the back. It's a shaded space where washing can also be hung.
What a contrast.
Yeah, such a contrast, yeah. A lot of the land in between these developments are empty now, but I think as more people move to Ahmedabad from the neighbouring cities or towns, all of these areas, like any city in the world, will start to be filled up, and the sprawl of the city will extend out to these outer areas. I think it's fascinating that it's completely like driven by this speculative market, and it's completely driven by people making money by putting as many people as they can or selling as many flats as they can in one place. But then it becomes interesting the kind of language that's used to sell those. I guess that's another thing that's been quite shocking after graduating, is that this is the reality. You know, all of these conversations that we have in this bubble of the academic world, no matter if we're in universities in India or New Zealand or in Europe or America, this is the reality of how cities are urbanizing. So, yeah. I'm not sure if I have a favorite building. I guess my favorite building would have been the CEPT campus and the architecture studios, I guess because it's so intertwined with like history, and for me and my personal history in India and friends and moments and times, the kind of discussions that happened here were so inspiring for me, and completely different from the kind of discussions that happen at my school in New Zealand. And I have appreciation for both.
Are you going back?
To New Zealand?
Yeah.
I try not to. I think for the beginnings of this project, I was thinking about a lot of conceptual ideas, how perhaps they could start to be inhabited by the labourers as they're building, like two groups of people at different points of time. But I was told when I was studying at CEPT and by teachers, like that wouldn't happen because of the quite strong caste system here. People that are buying these housing developments wouldn't want to share a space that was once occupied by people of a lower caste. I think that one example realised that the limits are really defined by the kind of cultural and social and not only economic but like political limitations. There's not much room to propose anything else than keeping what actually already exists. I love filmmaker called Satyajit Ray. He's yes, he makes made beautiful movies, and I think they're probably among some of my favorite films, the Apu trilogy. I think that's what I'm finding quite difficult at the moment, and being out in the real world and not being in this academic bubble anymore, because it made me a lot angrier at the world and how unfair life is for a lot of people. But in an optimistic way, after graduating, that perhaps architecture does have a role in easing some of the suffering that a lot of people feel. But I'm not sure yet. That's my optimistic view after just graduating. Let's see if I can survive. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.